Fox 2 presents Hancock and Kelly.
Hey, good Sunday morning. Welcome to Hancock and Kelly on Fox 2, where we take on the top issues of the week. On the right is John Hancock.
Top of the morning.
On the left is Michael Kelly.
Good morning.
I'm Andy Banker. On the agenda, the state versus Sam Page. The St. Louis County executive is indicted on felony crimes. Is it all just politics? Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe plays a trump card when it comes to redrawing congressional districts for a second time in 3 years to take one more seat away from Democrats in Congress. Something new this week, the H&K conversation. I sit down with a candidate for the United States Senate. His first name should certainly ring a bell in St. Louis. And our quote of the week is from the controversy over a new ad for blue jeans, or is it jeans as in G-E-N-E-S? Also, President Trump's tirade against his longtime Missouri ally, Senator Josh Hawley. We begin with a top elected official in Missouri's largest jurisdiction being charged with felony crimes. St. Louis County Executive Sam Page allegedly used taxpayer dollars to pay for election mailers in the campaign to defeat Proposition B in April. Page says he's no criminal.
I will cooperate fully with the investigation.
I don't think that it was an educational piece. It was a piece to convince the people not to support Proposition B. So it's not rocket science. It's written everywhere. Everybody knows that governmental entities do not do that, or you're not supposed to do that. And this time it seems that the county executive and his office got caught.
Nearly every member of the St. Louis County Council is criticizing Page. Councilmember Shalonda Webb says he should resign to deal with 4 criminal counts he now faces, including 2 counts of felony stealing. He claims the mailers were educational, but they were obviously not sent to encourage support of Prop B, which would have allowed the council to fire Page's department heads. The proposition failed in April. Still, was it a crime? Should Page resign? Should he face jail time here, John?
Well, yes, it's a crime. And he was directly advocating for the defeat of a ballot measure and using taxpayer money to do it. You can't do that. Now, as far as serving jail time, I suspect that's not the case here. I think Sam Page has got a good lawyer, Jeff Jensen, the former U.S. attorney.
Right.
And I suspect, who knows, but if I had to guess, I would think they would kind of work this down, plea it down to a misdemeanor that he would plead guilty to, because a felony would potentially cost him his medical license. So I think they plead it down to a misdemeanor, no jail time, and part of the plea agreement is Page agrees to resign from office. That's how I think this is going to play out.
Is that the end game here?
I guess potentially.
Defense attorneys, with Fox 2 are telling us they're poking holes in this notion that this is a felony stealing crime.
Well, yeah, look, there's definitely, there was enough evidence apparently to go before a judge and get a probable cause to go and get his phone and then go forward with indictments. So I think it's definitely a sticky situation. One would wonder if Sam Page wasn't the county executive of St. Louis County, the largest county in the state of Missouri, arguably the #1 Democratic elected official, whether or not this would happen. But the law is the law, Andy, and it appears as though there's some questions about whether or not the law has been violated.
Yeah, and we don't know, for example, what kind of communication was going back and forth between Page and his counsel and other people. Somebody should have flagged this and said, you know what, guys, we can't do this.
State investigator seized a cell phone, right? So
Yep.
There should be some information coming out of that. Let's get into the politics of it now. He is the state's top elected official. The state's top election official. Right-wing conservative Secretary of State Denny Hoskins is the one who really got the ball rolling in this case against the Democrat, Sam Page.
In my opinion, this seems a very blatant violation of Missouri state law, not just educational, but trying to persuade voters to vote against Proposition B. And so therefore, we referred it on to the proper authorities.
He says it's all about protecting voters from having their own tax dollars used in a campaign to influence their votes. When St. Louis County Prosecutor Melissa Price Smith had a conflict, given her past conflicts with Page over her appointment to her job, a judge appointed the Missouri Attorney General's office, a special prosecutor in this case. And Michael, Missouri's Attorney General, is another right-wing conservative, Andrew Bailey. Does that call any of this into question?
Well, it's definitely something that you should pay attention to, but at the same time, they had to go before a judge and be able to move forward with these indictments. Look, there's a lot to examine here, and I think we're going to learn a lot over the next couple of weeks. how this was being decided. Look, if it's truly an educational piece, Andy, there's 1 million people in St. Louis County. Not all of them are registered. And even if you were to limit that to likely registered voters, that's going to be larger than 50,000 people. What decided that only 50,000 people deserved education with taxpayer dollars about an issue in St. Louis County? I think that's one of the real problems that exist here. I think it's also one of the bigger questions that's going to be answered, because this tactic, and I'm not suggesting that these are like same, but school districts and fire districts use this exact same type of educational material to inform people about what's going on in their community. Whether or not this crossed the line, clearly the Attorney General and Secretary of State think so.
Would he be charged if he was a Republican?
Yeah, I mean, for doing this. And look, you got an education piece that you send it out to the postage. You send it out to 50,000 people. Who wants to bet me that those 50,000 people vote in every April election, and that's who was chosen to get this educational mailing? This was intentionally designed to sway the outcome of an election for an issue that Sam Page didn't like, and he shouldn't have done it. And it was arrogant to think he could get away with it.
Last week, John and Michael thought President Trump's call for redrawing Missouri's congressional districts likely wouldn't get very far. Well, that may be changing, with Missouri's Republican Governor Mike Kehoe now rallying behind the president on this matter.
Existing conversation about is Missouri represented properly in Washington, D.C., and quite frankly, what can we do to support President Trump's agenda, and Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who's done a very good job.
Well, it was just in 2022 that Missouri lawmakers reached a bipartisan consensus on the state's congressional map, with 6 districts leaning heavily Republican, 2 heavily Democrat. Typically, the map gets redrawn every 10 years in keeping with the new U.S. Census. Now President Trump and Governor Kehoe want to redraw it after only 3 years, presumably to flip Kansas City Congressman Emanuel Cleaver's Democrat seat to a Republican seat to help keep a Republican majority in the U.S. House. Michael Kelly.
Yeah, this is disappointing that the governor's made this decision. I don't think this is good for Missouri. I don't think what we're about to do throughout the country is good for the country, because what's going to happen is if they do this in Missouri and Texas to help Donald Trump, it's going to happen in California and New York to help the Democrats. That's not the way this system was meant to use. It's disappointing to see that Mike Kehoe is caving to this ridiculous spell that everybody else is as it relates to Donald Trump.
Is the governor turning out to be Trumpier than voters who may have, given him the benefit of the doubt?
Well, Donald Trump endorsed him in his campaign. And, I'm not crazy about this, redrawing the lines in the middle of a census period. And I don't know that it's going to have the intended effect that the president likes. For example, if you're going to, in Missouri, you could probably get to 7-1. But what it's going to have to do then is you're going to have to cut Kansas City up 3 ways. And it will mean that of our congressional delegation in the state, most likely, we will not have a single member of Congress who lives in either of the 2 largest cities. Not St. Louis City, not Kansas City. That's unprecedented. And in a state like Texas, where they're going to try and milk 4 or 5 seats, what you're doing is you're taking 58, 60% Republican districts, drawing them down to about 52% Republican districts so you can get more of them. That's going to put those seats in some peril in a midterm cycle where Donald Trump's approval rating's in the high 30s right now.
And John's right. That's one of those you may not like what you ultimately get, because in a couple of years there could be 3 Democratic seats if the Republicans aren't careful with splitting them up this way.
President Trump lashed out against his longtime ally in Missouri, Republican Senator Josh Hawley. The president's social media tirade came within hours of Hawley gushing over the president's tariff policies, and Hawley calling for rebate checks to be issued to American taxpayers.
Well, this was President Trump's idea, so I got to first give credit to him because he's bringing in so much tariff money. I mean, his trade deals have been so successful, his tariff policy, he's going to bring in $150 billion this year alone, this calendar year alone. And so he said the other day, we ought to give some of this back to the American people. And I thought that is a great idea.
But not long after that, the president ripped Hawley over the advancement of Hawley's so-called Pelosi Act in the Senate, which would ban members of Congress, plus future presidents and vice presidents, from owning and trading stocks. The president posted on social media, "I don't think real Republicans want to see their president, who has had unprecedented success, targeted because of the whims of a second-tier senator named Josh Hawley." John.
Well, that wasn't very kind, was it?
What's really going on here?
Well, I think, Donald Trump doesn't want to be restricted in terms of how he makes money. And he's made a lot of money in the White House. And now, Hawley's right on this legislation. Members of Congress, the executive branch, people that are making policy, making decisions that are going to affect the stock market shouldn't be able to capitalize on it. It's no different than what Martha Stewart was accused of years ago. And so I think Hawley's right on that. I think Hawley's wrong on the tariff issue because, you talk about all the money coming into the country. Guess who pays for that? Every consumer pays for it. That's what tariffs are. It's a tax on all of us, which is why they're talking about giving money back. But as far as the investment bill, Josh Hawley is spot on.
Could this be payback for Hawley's, steadfast insistence on the release of the Epstein files? I don't know. Is there something else?
I think
going on
everything's just at the moment for Donald Trump. And look, Josh Hawley was one of the leaders of the insurrection for Donald Trump. You would think they'd have an affinity for each other that would continue to go on. Josh Hawley, embracing the tariffs and then getting slapped down the president is a bit funny to me because this is what I think the way the Republicans find themselves. This is not about policy for Donald Trump. It's about Donald Trump. And Josh Hawley, I still think, has figured that out.
Up next on Hancock and Kelly, the H&K Conversation. I sit down with a Democrat candidate for Senate. Most of you may not know him, but his name will certainly be easy to remember in St. Louis.
To hear more, listen to the podcast. Just search for Hancock and Kelly.
Welcome back. Time for the Hancock and Kelly Conversation. I sat down with a congressman who's hoping to become a household name in the St. Louis area. Actually, his first name already is.
We got to come together.
Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy is a suburban Chicago Democrat who shares a first name with arguably the biggest of St. Louis celebrities, Raja, the first Asian elephant born at the St. Louis Zoo. Raja, the congressman, is running for the seat of retiring Illinois Senator Dick Durbin. Krishnamurthy is an immigrant from India, now in his 5th term in the House.
When I came to this country as a 3-month-old baby, my parents were doing well until suddenly they weren't in the recession of 1973. And thanks to the generosity of the American people, we were allowed to move into public housing and food stamps when my father lost his income. And my father was able to get on his feet and then eventually make it to Peoria, Illinois, which is where I grew up. And every night at the dinner table, my father would say, think of the greatness of this country, and whatever you do, make sure it's there for the next families who need it. That became my North Star, my mission statement, if you will.
He's in a crowded Democratic Party field in the Senate race, headlined by Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton and Chicago Congresswoman Robin Kelly.
And I've spent my career in Congress standing up to bad actors and corporate bullies, whether it's going after e-cigarette companies who have tried to hook a generation of youth onto e-cigarettes, or whether it's food conglomerates that poison our baby food with toxic heavy metals. I've gone after them, I've held them accountable, gotten results, and now I have to stand up to the biggest bully of them all, as I see it, which is Donald Trump. You've got to be grounded in the economic reality that our constituents are complaining about right now. There's an affordability crisis, whether it's affording basic staples like groceries, or affording childcare, health care, educating your kids, or retiring with dignity. These are the prime issues that kind of bedevil most Americans right now.
How do you win people over down here if you're going to be the senator for the entire state?
Sure. Well, I think the reason why in my own district, which went 47% for Donald Trump, I far outpaced both Kamala Harris and, of course, Donald Trump, is because many Republicans voted for me. Why? Because we get things done. We don't care about whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you voted for me or not, and you come to my office and we say, we are the ultimate yes people. We can disagree without being disagreeable. As long as we have a civil dialogue about it, I think people are willing to respect you. But when the rubber meets the road, when someone needs help, are you there to help them? And if you are, they'll give you a chance.
Can you love someone who voted for Donald Trump? Is your party too far astray of where most Illinoisans might actually be? 47% of your district went for him.
Right. Well, I love my wife. I like a lot of other people. But I think the most important thing is this, which is we have to respect each other. I know a lot of people who voted for Trump and who voted for me. And I think that while I can't quite get my head around all the reasons why people might vote for the current president, I have to respect what they did and then, again, try to meet them where they are. I don't think they voted for a situation that involves economic chaos, which is what they feel has now kind of visited them. And so in that instance, there's an opening. Democrats can go to that person and say, hey, I understand what you're going through. This is what I would like to do to try to help you. I've been on a tariff tour, okay, across Illinois. I visited a small business in Rockford, Illinois, that was going gangbusters as late as March 31st. Then Liberation Day hit, and they've been devastated, and now they're laying people off. Not only that, but unfortunately, we have a situation where the president has decided to deploy ICE in a way that looks very political, that looks very targeted, and is very disruptive. And it's hurting our economy as well. Me and a guy named G.T. Thompson, a Republican, came together and authored the law that now has modernized our nation's skills-based and career technical education. It was passed and it was signed into law by President Trump in 2018. It's now gone into effect, and 11 million people every year get a better quality, high-skilled education now compared to before. The problem is there's not enough money for it.
Who's your hero?
Oh, wow. It's my parents, because they took the ultimate risk.
A little Trump bashing there, but not much. Is this how Democrats need to run?
Right, and leading with the economic issues. There's nothing wrong with beating up Donald Trump, but make sure that it relates back to the things that matter to the people that you're trying to represent.
Can this guy win?
Sure. Crowded field, you know, I think my guess would be the most extreme progressive is most likely to win that primary. I don't think that's him, but he could win.
Still to come on Hancock and Kelly, our quote of the week. Blue jeans, Jeans or Genes? Our quote of the week comes out of the kerfluffle over the new American Eagle ad campaign. It features actress Sydney Sweeney in American Eagle jeans talking about her great jeans with a play on the words Jeans, as in denim clothing, and Genes, as in one's genetics. The ad is drawing intense backlash from the left, where it has been labeled as a nod to white privilege, even a celebration of Nazi master race ideals. Our quote is from White House Communications Director Stephen Chung, who posted on social media, "This warped, moronic, and dense liberal thinking is a big reason why Americans voted the way they did in 2024. They're tired of this bull blank." Michael.
Well, I didn't know this was a left thing, and I also saw the ad and didn't hear what she said, so it didn't affect me that way, guys.
Well, think back to Dylan Mulvaney and the Bud Light controversy. Is this are Republicans making more out of the so-called backlash from the left than actually
I don't disagree with what the guy said. I mean, it's a ridiculous reaction on the left to this thing. You know.
Right.
Michael looks at the pictures in the books. He doesn't read the words.
Exactly. Some articles are okay.
Yeah.
Final thoughts are next. First, the hazy heat of summer. Earlier this past week over the Central West End, looking archward. What a delightful break from the heat we're having now. Final thoughts, Michael Kelly?
Well, I, for one, am grateful that the heat is broken and the only hot air I'm having to deal with is Hancock.
There you go.
You guys know how much.
How are you going to respond to that?
It's fine. You guys know how much I like sports.
Yes.
Love sports.
I've heard something about this.
I've been participating over the last week in a little trivia competition. It's going well.
On the radio, right?
Yeah, but it's not what I'm here to talk about, Andy.
Oh, okay.
Fella's sitting down with his buddy and he's lamenting. He says, "My wife left me." And he said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." She says, "All I do is watch sports all the time, and she can't take it anymore." The guy said, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. How long were you together?" He said, 7 seasons.
That's very good. Maybe we should just end on a Hancock joke.
There you go.
I like that, a new segment. Thanks for watching Hancock and Kelly. Fox News Sunday is next. And remember, if it's Sunday in St. Louis, it's Hancock and Kelly on Fox 2. We'll see you next week.